Today, we're talking about communication, but we're going to come at it from a really different angle. The world of cross-cultural counseling. It's a place where connection is everything. And the lessons we can pull from it, well, they're pretty incredible for our everyday lives.
You know that feeling, right? Where you're talking to someone and you're using all the right words, but you are just completely missing each other. It's that frustrating moment of disconnect, and it can build these unseen walls between us.
Okay, so check this out. The counseling room is basically a high-stakes lab for communication. I mean, think about it. You've got a counselor and a client, sometimes from totally different worlds, who have to build trust and real understanding, and they have to do it fast. The techniques they use, they're not just for therapy. They are an amazing blueprint for anyone who wants to bridge a cultural gap.
So where does any of this even start? Well, it all comes down to the single most important ingredient in any relationship: trust. Without it, you've got nothing. The whole thing falls apart.
In counseling, they have this really official-sounding term for that moment of breakthrough: therapeutic surrender. I know, it sounds intense, right? But all it really means is that moment when a person finally feels safe enough to let their guard down, to really trust the other person, and to just be open about what's going on.
But here's the thing. This trust isn't some kind of magic. You can't just wish it into existence. It's built on real, concrete actions. It all starts with building some rapport, just finding common ground. And then listening. I mean, really listening. That's what helps break down that natural resistance we all have. And it makes it easier for people to share.
And the stakes for getting this wrong are, well, they're incredibly high. Get this, research shows that about half, 50%, of all ethnic minority clients quit counseling after just one session. One. That is a massive failure to connect.
So why is that number so high? What's going on? Well, the source material points to a few major roadblocks. Things like different cultural values, differences in social class, and just the simple human fact that it's often harder to trust someone who comes from a different background than our own. It's a hurdle we have to consciously work to get over.
So to get over those hurdles, counselors have a kind of playbook. And it's interesting because it doesn't start with what you do, it starts with how you think. There are these two fundamental mindsets that really shape the entire interaction.
Okay, first up, you've got the emic versus the etic view. Now, these might sound a bit academic, but the idea is actually super simple. It's about perspective. Do you zoom in and focus on what makes a person's culture specific and unique? That's the emic view. Or do you zoom out and look for the universal human things that connect all of us, no matter where we're from? That's the etic view.
So an emic approach in action might look like this. A counselor thinks, to really help this person, I need to go learn everything I can about their specific cultural background. They believe the key to understanding is buried in those cultural details.
The etic viewpoint, on the other hand, comes from this really powerful belief. It starts with the idea that at the end of the day, our core human experiences, love, loss, fear, joy, are universal. We're all more alike than we are different.
All right, the second big mindset choice is all about action. When you're facing a problem, where do you put your energy? The alloplastic view says the best thing to do is to change the world around you. But the autoplastic view says the best way to cope is to change your internal world, yourself.
Let's make this really concrete. Imagine someone comes to you and tells you they're being discriminated against. This is where that alloplastic versus autoplastic dilemma becomes incredibly real. What do you do? What's the best way to help?
So the alloplastic approach is all about taking external action. It's that voice that says, this is wrong. The system is the problem. We need to fight this. We need to change it. It's about empowering someone to change their environment.
Now, the autoplastic approach, that focuses inward. It's the voice that says, look, the world can be an unfair place, but I can help you build up your resilience, help you change your internal response so that this injustice has less power over you. It's all about changing the self.
Okay, so we've got our foundation of trust. We've got our core mindsets. Now let's talk about some really practical, on-the-ground tools you can use to prevent misunderstandings before they even have a chance to start.
One of the most powerful tools is something called structuring, and it's as simple as it sounds. It just means at the very beginning of an interaction, you lay everything out on the table. You explain your role, you talk about their role, and you clarify what you're both trying to accomplish. The bigger the cultural gap, the more important this little step becomes.
And here's another thing to watch out for. Words can be traps. The source calls this a connotative error. What it means is we can both agree on the dictionary definition of a word, but the emotional meaning, the feeling behind it, can be totally different.
Just think about a word like cool. It could mean 100 different things depending on who you're talking to.
All right, we've covered a ton of ground here, from these big psychological ideas to some pretty practical tools. So let's bring it all together and figure out how we can take these ideas out of the clinic and apply them on the street, in our actual lives.
So what's the real takeaway here? I think it's this. True connection doesn't happen by accident. It's a journey. And that journey starts by building trust. It's guided by the mindsets we choose to adopt, knowing when to see what's unique and when to see what's universal. It's about knowing when it's time to change the system and when it's time to build up ourselves. And it all comes to life when we use simple tools to make sure we're not just using the same words, but actually speaking the same language.
So, I'll leave you with this question to chew on. Think about your life, with your coworkers, your neighbors, maybe even with your family. What's one of those invisible walls you know is there? And which one of these ideas could you use to start, just maybe, taking it down, brick by brick?